Three, two. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I hope you had a very restful evening, and I hope that life is treating you pretty good. Once again, my name is Albert Fellew, and I am broadcasting from the great state of Georgia. Now, many of you may wonder, well, this is a different cowboy hat than the one he had yesterday, because last time I broadcasted was on the 4th. Actually, I kind of like this one. Now, I know it probably will appear black in the broadcast, but the fact of the matter is that when I bought it, it was like a deep navy color. But the problem is that I put a spray on there to make it water resistant, and the spray unfortunately makes it appear a little bit darker. So it actually looks more like a black as opposed to a navy. But okay. You go with the flow, and but I do like the hat, and I do have my authentic cowboy shirt on, so I feel good for today. I just don't have the boots on, but trust me, the boots will be on later. Okay, so why do I want to do this broadcast today for you? As you know, as you've seen, L'Oreal went and just laid off a ton of people yesterday, and the bloodletting is continuing to go with corporate America. And I think the overall cover story that we are being told was it's the companies want to use the implementation of AI. Evidently, Salesforce went and let go 10,000 employees, but then hired an additional 2,000 employees to augment its Salesforce. So AI is really pushing, or Salesforce is really pushing AI as part of their growth strategy going forward. Again, if that's what companies are going to do, that's what companies are going to do. And the problem is that if you're on the right side of that, in the future, hopefully your company will grow. If you're a shareholder, hopefully it will make you richer, and things will work out. The problem is that for us that have been on the other side, we don't get a chance to participate in that anymore, and now we have to look to find our place somewhere else. And that part can be extremely distressing for a lot of people. And let me put it this way, distress has no age limit. I don't care if you're 18 and you're just starting your career, coming out of high school, versus a person who is approaching their middle to late 60s and trying to just figure out a way to retire, collect their Social Security, and somehow live a life of dignity and peace and quiet. Distress will be with us throughout our careers. And that was a very bitter lesson that I had to learn in my career. In my 5 years when I was in the military, I faced hazardous conditions. But this is what I signed up for. I never gave it a second thought that, oh, God, I could lose my life. Well, that's what you signed up for. That's part of the job. But part of the job, too, is defending the greatest nation on earth. And that was the counterpart to my fear, was my patriotism symbolizing the good, and my fear, for lack of a better term, symbolizing the bad. But the fact of the matter is as I transition into civilian life, companies are important, but it's not the nation. So the problem is sometimes the motivation on the positive side, unless you're being very well compensated for what you do, and if you are, thank God, okay? But the fact of the matter is that most of us, yes, hopefully we're being paid what I call the professional salary, right? It allows us to support our families, take a vacation, maybe once in a while buy a new car, contribute to our 401k, etc. But it's two totally different premises. So why today I want to talk about this specific topic, a random act of kindness. Well, as I've said earlier, I'm an Eagle Scout. And when we were coming up through scouting, we were kind of, for lack of a better term, indoctrinated. I don't like that term. but reinforced is probably a better one. And it was called being able to perform a good deed for the day. And what that meant was to develop a mindset that, number one, you are part of something larger, a community, and sometimes that community needs help, however big or small. But sometimes you, as a single individual, can perform an act that may hereby never even be remembered again, but the fact that you did it, that you participated in it, reinforced how valuable both society was, but more importantly, how important it was to have you in that community. And I learned that, and that spirit really transformed me in terms of my decision to go into the military. Again, I was too young when John Kennedy was assassinated, but I was certainly old enough to hear his words when he said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, rather ask what you can do for your country." And to serve in the military was one of the prime examples of that ability to make an act to the nation, an act of self-sacrifice, and yet an act that was so fulfilling. And for myself, I participated for 2 years in the Air Force ROTC at the University of Connecticut in Storrs, Connecticut, where they had a large Air Force ROTC detachment, which is what they're called. And as a result of that, I was able to get an appointment to the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, where I attended for 4 years. I graduated. I became a second lieutenant, served in security police for 5 years, and then on May 29th, 1989 was my last day of active duty. Do I regret it? Not at all. I would do it all again, not under these present circumstances with all this craziness. Now, I had a rather unique experience while I was at the academy. My commissioning officer was the 40th President of the United States, Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan was known as the great communicator, and trust me, he did not disappoint. Both of my parents, truth be told, were card-carrying Republicans, and they were sitting next to a couple that actually lived in New Jersey. And the story that my dad told me was he leaned over and asked the other dad, "You going to vote for the man in November?" And the other gentleman said, "Hell yeah. I'm a card-carrying Democrat, but this guy came to my kid's graduation. Damn right I'm going to vote for Reagan." Well, at that day, Gary Hart, who was his opponent in the 84 election, was visiting some swamp in New Jersey and complaining about, the environment or whatever. And Reagan had this beautiful photo op for the day that he was at the Air Force Academy. Now, later on when his memoirs came out, I looked up on that day, May 30th, 1984, what did the man write about? Well, come to find out, he had flown in the night before. He had stayed overnight in the superintendent's home, and then that morning, got dressed or whatever. They had the motorcade down to the stadium, Falcon Stadium. He did his address. He departed on Air Force One, flew back to Washington, and the good thing is that when you fly unfortunately, when you fly from west to east, you lose 2 hours. So by the time he got home, it was already probably about 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening. Well, he hosted a dinner of the NATO defense ministers in the White House that night. And what he wrote in his journal, and I'm paraphrasing, was, "I have seen both the present and the future of NATO, and I am well pleased to know that it will be in good hands." Well, as truth would have it, 2 years later, in March of 1986, I was stationed in NATO and remained in NATO for the rest of my tour. And at that time, it was kind of a hot spot. because I arrived in March. In the following month, President Reagan went and decided to go and bomb Gaddafi because Gaddafi had blown up a disco in Berlin that killed American service members. We were on high alert for 30 days, but unfortunately then Gaddafi got back, and that's when he had his agents plant a bomb on that Pan Am 747 that blew up over Lockerbie, Scotland, and all those souls were lost. Unfortunately, Gaddafi now is no longer with us. There is that saying, what comes around goes around, or goes around comes around. And Gaddafi, unfortunately, met his fate, not at the fate of the Americans, but at the fate of his own people who he had oppressed for so many years. Well, just both a story of encouragement, but also a story of tragedy. So let's get back to what is a random act of kindness. A random act of kindness, for me, simply means that it is something that I can do in the moment that either provides a moment of encouragement, satisfaction, relief, or consolation to someone, and in most instances, someone that I have never met and may not ever meet again in my life. So you might ask, why do it? I mean, why do it? Well, let me go and ask you this. Why do you contribute to your church or your synagogue? Okay? You may drop a couple bucks in the collection plate, but you don't know where it's going to go to. So if you don't know where it's going to go to, well, other than the maintenance of the church and that sort of thing, why do you do it? Well, because I think fundamentally as humans, we do have an altruistic side, a giving side. I can't tell you. I think that one of the biggest oddities I find is that you have people that will burst into tears watching that Sarah McLachlan commercial, that infomercial you see very late at night or early in the morning about dogs and cats. I mean, I bust out seeing it. I'm like, how could people be so cruel to animals? But the fact of the matter is that sometimes we relish the chance to save an animal, but maybe we're cringy to help our fellow man. An animal can be cute and cuddly when they're finally cleaned up. But if we see a homeless person, we're kind of cringy. And I know I've had those moments myself. But the fact of the matter is that what a random act of kindness should do for each and every one of us is, number one, it reaffirms our sense of humanity, not only for ourselves, but for the people that we direct it to. So what I want to do is I just want to give you some quick examples of things that have happened to me recently, and hopefully may serve as a bias for action for you going forward. Because as I said before, I don't care if you've been unemployed for a day, a week, a month, 3 months, a year, 2 years, or a really long time. And I'm going to sum up with a really long time at the end of this broadcast. But the fact of the matter is, unless we give ourselves a chance to go and to interact with other people, especially, it's not hard to do it when you're employed, right? When you're employed, you go to the gas station, you gas up your car, you may see some. I always make it a point, if I see a person with a nice car when they're gassing up, I always make it a point saying, man, that's a nice car. Well done, sir. And, you want to see a grin as big as a Super Bowl, just compliment a young man on his car, right? Because we know that moms, your cars are filled with the kids. What we need to do with moms' cars is that they need to get an automatic free pass to a car wash, get the car washed, and then afterward vacuumed out, because you're carrying McDonald's French fries from the Stone Age when you have kids. There was a quote that I received in business school that I've never forgot, and it's simply this: always keep your car as clean as possible, because sometimes, you'll never know, you may have to give the CEO a ride to the airport. And very early in my career at Bell South, I was in a job, and I worked for a gentleman. His first name was Art, and we'll leave it at that. And Art comes down, and he's got this harried look on his face. And he says, guys, my car won't start. Can any of you take me to the airport? I said, absolutely, sir. Come on, let's go. So we go in there, and he's got a suitcase in there, and my car is immaculate. I mean, I keep it clean, and we put the suitcase in the back seat. He gets in on the right side, and he kind of looks around, and he says, God, this car is clean. I said, well, yes, sir. I mean, I'm former military. I'm used to keeping a clean car. He says, I wish my kid would keep his car clean, and I paid for it. So I got him to the airport on time. He said, thanks, Al, and, he went on his way, and I went back to the office and, didn't think anything about it. But that was very early on. But let's bring it up to today. Okay, as I said before, when you're employed, you interact with people all day long, right? So if you want to share a little love or a little kindness, no big deal. You're just glad to do it. What makes it different and more special that when you're unemployed is that now when you do have those instances of where you can be charitable, you can be kind, and I'm not saying that you have to give money. A random act of kindness is like that. It's just giving a person a ride to the airport. Yes, it costs me gas, whatever, but this man was paying for my paycheck. So I just looked at it and say, indeed, I could do something about it. Let's do it. So when we talk now about, in terms of what a random act of kindness should be for you, let me give you some examples of what have happened for me. And then I would love it in the comment section. Now, the other thing, too, I've learned in YouTube is if you like the channel, subscribe to the channel. And if you subscribe to the channel, thank you very much. That helps me grow the channel. And if you think a big thumbs up, please like the channel. But more importantly, give me some comments. Let me know what's going on in your life so that I can reach out to you either privately or whatever and just give you a word of encouragement. But again, subscribe, like, comment. Those are the big three. Thank you. All right. Let's talk about my adventure in Publix. I have a Publix that's about 6 miles away from me. I like Publix, very clean store. Personnel are always very nice. Usually I can find 99% of what I'm looking for at Publix. Okay. So I make it a point that when I'm in the checkout line, I'm kind of scanning around for one specific thing. Is there a person that's in back of me that has less than what I have in my cart? Let me give you an example. There was a father one time, I was checking out, and he had two things. He had a large sheet cake that said happy birthday, and it was in pink, so I knew it was for his daughter or a loved one. And he had a box of Corona beer. And I looked at him and smiled and said, man, is that all you got? He said, yeah, I'm kind of in a rush. I said, sir, please, take my place, get checked out, go. He said, really? Sure, not a problem. Go ahead. I backed out my cart. He swooped in. He got checked out 30 seconds later. He's out the door and said, thank you, man, and took off. Now, the one thing I would have liked is that if he had broken open that box, popped me a Corona, and said thanks, man, I would have loved that. I'd taken that deal all day long. But he didn't. But he said thank you. Good enough for me. Okay. Another time, same Publix. I'm in there. There's a lady in back of me who I affectionately describe as 5'0" nothing. Now, the reason why I use that description is because my own wife is smaller than I am. I'm 6 feet. She's 5 foot nothing. Okay, so there's a definitely height disparity between the two of us. It was kind of cold out. She had a winter coat on, and she was clutching this little bag like little old ladies do. Okay, if you little ladies, you're going to flame me on that one. I'm big enough. I'll take the description. But I'm just saying, she was little, she was female, and she was clutching a bag like this in front of her purse. I looked at her and said, "Ma'am, is that all you got?" And she said, "Yes," in an accent, a Spanish accent. I said, I looked at the checkout guy, and he and I know each other. I won't use his name, but let's call him Sal. I looked at Sal, and he looked at me, and he kind of knew what was going to happen. So I said, "Ma'am, why don't you go ahead of me, please?" So she's like, "Really?" "Yes, please." "Now, I insist. Ladies first." She goes and she puts her little bag down, and what happens is that I looked at Sal, and Sal, I got this. And then I just said, "Ma'am, go ahead. I got this." She looks at me, thinking that, she's being pranked. "No, ma'am, please." And so she said, "Muchas gracias." Now, I don't know a lot of Spanish, but I do know enough, and I try to learn. Please, thank you, that sort of thing. I said, "De nada," which means you're welcome. And then I just said, "Vaya con Dios." Go with God. So, Sal goes and checks me out. I've got a couple other things I need to do. I come home. I've got a bunch of receipts in my hand. I immediately go to that Publix receipt. I look at it and say, "Wow, that's all she wanted." Then there was a line item in that receipt that said deli, chicken fingers, $7.50. Now, I've eaten enough of Publix chicken fingers, and I think currently chicken fingers are like $6.99 a pound. And typically, those are probably either 3 or 4 chicken fingers. Because I'm just going to sound like an endorsement. It may or may not, but I'm just saying, truth be told, Publix make great chicken fingers. Okay, end of statement. That's all she had. Now, maybe if I had more time, I would have walked her back and said, "Ma'am, you want to get some more? I'll pay for it. Just get more." But like in the biblical story in the New Testament about the widow and the 2 mites that she puts in there, and that's all she had, that's all she wanted? I don't know. But I paid for it. And more importantly, I wanted to pay for it. Because God only knows what else was going on in this woman's life. But you know what? If I could do that, not a problem. Not a problem. Okay. I want to talk about briefly the rosary. Now, for those who are Catholic, they know what a rosary is. But for those of you who are not Catholic, I just want to briefly show you what a rosary looks like. A rosary is like this, and I'll go through the various parts. You'll have the first part where you will have a crucifix, and then you have 5 beads assigned. The first one is the way we keep track of our prayer. The first one is an Our Father bead. The next 3 are the Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Then another Our Father bead. Okay, this particular rosary is made, if you'll notice, one side has got darker beads, but as you move through the rosary, the beads get lighter and lighter, such that, okay, this is now, they're blue, and now they're approaching almost like a turquoise type thing, a teal, maybe, but then the final set of beads are white. Now, this is called what we call a salvation rosary. And what it is, because of the colors of the beads, because we start in a dark place, but we move to the light as we recite the gospel, and the Hail Marys remind me of the gospel. It moves us to the light. And why is that important? Because Jesus Christ is the light of the world. And that act reminds us subliminally that we are praying to our Lord Jesus Christ with the intervention of his mother, the Blessed Virgin Mary. Again, as Protestants, I know you have some theological difficulties with this, but as Catholics, we don't. We pray. Okay, so why is that important? Okay, I recently have met a woman on LinkedIn who is now also a job seeker. I don't want to say where she's based out of, but she and I have had the chance not only to communicate in text, but actually to exchange some phone calls. And I was encouraged that she had recently had an interview which she felt was going very well. So I called her and I said, I'm a Catholic, you're a Catholic, I'd like to do something nice for you. And I make rosaries. These are all different types of rosaries. I purchase the material, I make the rosaries, and I frequently give them away free of charge. So I wanted to go and say, ma'am, I'd like to send you two, one for you to keep in your purse, and the other one to keep at your bedside. And that way, when you say the rosary. Now, for me, truth be told, I have 5 different rosaries by my pillow. I use different ones to kind of rotate through, but I'm a heavy believer in the rosary. But that's me. Why is that important? Again, it was just a simple act of kindness that I could extend to a person that's in stress. Because you will find, and now I'm speaking to everyone here, I don't know what your faith tradition was while you were employed. And frankly, I don't care. But trust me, there's a saying that there are no atheists in foxholes when you're at war. Well, when you're unemployed, there are no atheists among the unemployed. They are going to say a simple prayer. My God, please help me. Fair enough. Beautiful prayer. I'm sure it's been recited millions of times today, even throughout the world. But the whole point is that if you weren't spiritual before, you are going to become spiritual when you're unemployed. And when you start getting those rejection notices, and when it's really going and cranking on your soul, you are going to find God. And that's not a bad thing. Fulton Sheen used to say, the Archbishop Fulton Sheen, God rest his soul, and hopefully a saint, used to say, God communicates in silence, but he screams at us in our pain. And not that God is screaming at us like, you're not worthy, you're worthless. No, he's screaming at us saying, I love you. I miss you. You are a child of mine. Come home. I love you. And there's no beautiful story of that than the story of the prodigal son. When the son goes to the father and says, give me my inheritance. It's time. I'm tired of this. The father, in his mercy, says, okay. So he splits it up. They come out to a dollar amount, gives it to the kid. Kid doesn't say thank you. He goes off to a far city. He goes and he has a great time. He sleeps with prostitutes. He's hanging out with the boys. He's what we call a baller, right? He's the man. Well, the problem is, being a baller has a very short lifespan because he begins to run out of money, and then all of the money is gone. And what the twist of fate is that he then hires himself out. That's where the term hired hand comes from. He hires himself out to a farmer, but not a farmer of grain or barley or something like that. He hires himself to a farmer of swine, of pigs, which is antithetical to the Jewish religion, because they don't eat anything of the cloven foot. So here's this Jewish boy, I'll call him boy only because of his attitude, or young man, goes and hires himself out, has got to live with swine. And then he comes to the rationale that the servants at his father's house, the servants, were fed better than what, and he was competing with the pigs to eat the husk so that he could even survive. So, of course, as the story goes, he has the epiphany. He goes back to his father and confesses that I've sinned against you and I have sinned against heaven. And I am no longer your son. Just treat me, please, as one of your hired hands. Now, of course, he has an older brother who hears the story, and the older brother's pissed. And he goes to his father and says, why are you welcoming him back? You've given him a robe, you put a gold ring on his finger, you put shoes on his feet, and me, I have been loyal to you, and I haven't even given one calf or kid, which is a goat, for him to roast. So in other words, you let this kid go and be a baller somewhere else, and you won't even give me a kid that I can roast with my friends? And I'm loyal to you. What is that all about? And the father says in that beautiful saying, my son, all that I have is yours. But your brother, who we thought was dead, has now come back, and he is alive. My brothers, my sisters in unemployment, my friends, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be that son. Not that we lived in a disparative way, but our life was so disruptive by circumstances we could not control, but yet we are living in that pain of that moment. And if this rosary to a fellow Catholic can provide a level of solace to help them be able to move forward, I'm all for it. Finally, I want to go and share about a Mass card, and I'll keep this story relatively short. As Catholics, we pray for the dead. It has been from the tradition of the early part of the church, and the reason of the tradition that we have daily Masses was because back then people died every day. So in order, before their bodies were buried in the catacombs, a Mass was said for the intention of their soul. I had a classmate from the Air Force Academy. His name was Bobby Avila. Bobby played football for Air Force, and Bobby was in two of the squadrons that I was in. In the Air Force Academy, you are in a cadet squadron for 2 years, and then at the end of your sophomore year, you're moved to a different squadron where you will remain for your final 2 years. Well, I just kind of lucked out, and Bobby was with me together in 6th Squadron, affectionately known as Bull 6, and for our last 2 years, we were moved to Independence 4, 4th Squadron. Bobby played football for Air Force all 4 years. Just a hero. And Bobby was actually ahead of me in the graduation line. I do have a picture of President Reagan, and I will post it in the comments. But as Bobby is walking off, I'm receiving my degree from President Reagan, and I affectionately look at that as that's just another way of Bobby clearing the way for other people to pass through. Well, unfortunately, I found out that Bobby died in fall of last year. Through the Association of Graduates at the Air Force Academy, I was able to contact his next of kin. He had a brother, Paul, that attended the prep school, also attended the academy, but did not graduate, and who's currently living out in California. So I was able to call Paul and first of all, you know, tell him how I knew his brother, obviously, but how much I was going to miss Bob. And I said, with his permission, I'd like to have 2 masses said for his soul. And when we get him scheduled, I will have the mass cards sent to him. And then, in turn, Bob's father is still alive. So I wrote a 2-page letter for him, basically tell him how much I love Bobby, what Bobby meant to me in my life, and you know, that he raised a great son. I was able to get that in the mail. At the same time, I was able to send 2 rosaries to that person I spoke about earlier. Okay, again, here's my point, and I know I can go long, but I'm a storyteller. I enjoy telling stories, and hopefully you like listening to stories. Okay, my very last story. My last day at AT&T, the official day that I was downsized, was the 22nd of December 2008. Now, I had 10 days of terminal leave, so my last day in the office was actually on the 10th of December. But my severance did not start officially until the 22nd, and I received a severance of approximately, back then, 11 months. That was a long time ago, and trust me, they're not giving severance like that anymore, to the best of my knowledge, unless you're a very, very high exec. But for the average rank and file, you know, you're lucky if you get 2-3 months, maybe, if you're lucky. Since my wife was working, we got our health care through her job. She works for a school system here within the state of Georgia, and so we were fine. Now, we had resources. I had savings. My daughter was in Catholic school at the time, and her fear was we had to yank her out of Catholic school. But I told her, no, that money is in a lockbox, as it was. She was going to continue her education. Then afterward, you know, we kind of cash flow her education. That's what we did. My daughter was able to graduate from college in 6 years because she switched majors. But she graduated with $0 in debt. Okay. There is a biblical restriction about numerology, okay, with the expectation of that it is prohibitive in the Bible. So I don't believe in numerology at all. However, I'd like to share this final story with you. From the day that I was downsized at AT&T to the day that I started my first professional gig was 777 days, or 111 weeks. Okay? Now, if we had gone to a casino and gone to a one-armed bandit and plunked in, you know, the dollar slots, and we hit 777, that's a jackpot. I'm just waiting, you know. Let it just keep going, or even better, you know. I mean, you'll shut the machine down. That's going to be a payout of a lifetime. Well, let me share this story with you. I started consulting with a company called Insight Global, and the person that I ran into was a fellow Air Force Academy graduate. I won't use his real name, but we'll call him Ron. And Ron was a very nice and decent guy. Well, he got me an interview with a company here in Atlanta called Rollins Corporation. Okay? Now, the gentleman that I was going to be interviewing with, I won't use his name, but he was a classmate of my twin brother who attended West Point. Yes, there's an identical twin of mine. If you type Felu in LinkedIn, you'll see 2 of us. Okay? You'll see an Albert and you'll see a Robert. Well, this gentleman, we'll call Ron, was one of my brother's classmates. Now, Ron knew through my brother that he had an identical twin, but Ron and I never met. I go into the interview, and I'll never forget, it was a Thursday. I'm wearing a dark blue suit, and I get escorted to Ron's office. He's at his desk. He says, "You don't remember me, do you?" I said, "No, sir, not offhand." He said, "I was just in Starbucks, and you were there waiting for me. And that's when I first saw you." Now, having said that, then I do remember, yeah. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, I just kind of glanced. We didn't know each other, but, he was dressed in a very nice suit. I was dressed in a very nice suit. And my interview was at 11 o'clock, I believe, so I got there like at 10 o'clock. So I'm not a big coffee fan, but Starbucks is a nice place to hang out. So I was just there kind of reviewing that. So that's the first time he saw me. We didn't talk. An hour later, I'm in his office, and we're starting to talk, and he's asking me some perfunctory questions. And then I can see that he's got a look that's a cross between pain and laughter. And I'm thinking, what the heck is going on? And he just kind of put my resume down and said, "Al, you are exactly like your brother." And I said, "Is that good or bad? Because I know my brother." But he said, "No, it's good. Can you start on Monday?" I said, "Yes, sir, I can. Or I'll even start sooner if you want me to." He said, "No, you got to give me until Monday. Welcome aboard." And that was it. So I go back to my recruiter, and he gets the word. I said, "What is the billing rate?" He tells me the billing rate, and I'm happy as a clam, because not only was it more than what I was making when I was at AT&T, but I was going to work for someone that really wanted me to be there. And over that 6 months as a contractor, worked so well that he actually hired me as a director of project management, but unfortunately 6 months later, I got downsized, and I think 3 months after that, he got downsized as well. But I will never forget that random act of kindness that he extended to me. Because, again, I did not know him. He knew my brother, but he didn't know me. And in 5 minutes, I had the opportunity to convince him. Now, to me, folks, that's a dream interview, right? To get fired, or to get hired, not fired. A lot of people can get fired in 5 minutes, but to get hired in 5 minutes, man, oh man, I was over the moon. And I was thanking God from here to Nirvana. But the whole point was is that he, in that brief chance, gave me the... Now, I've been downsized from other positions, but I'm telling you, that was one for the record books. So we're coming up on about 45 minutes right now. So what's the final note of inspiration? You're a human. You're intrinsically kind and decent. And if it can, you'll help out someone, even in the smallest of things. Do it. Do it. Do it. Again, I'm a devout Catholic. But there is that saying about karma, what comes around goes around. And trust me, being decent and kind and generous are attributes we need more in the world. But if you, in one instance, can go and do that for someone else, I do believe that it will come back. And it will come back much greater. So let me give you that encouragement. And I am going to pray for you. I'm going to pray for you, and I'm going to pray this rosary. And now I need to add another level of intention for all of my fellow people that are currently, and only, I use the word currently, not perpetually, currently unemployed. I will pray for you, for your health, for your ability to press on. And know that I am with you in a virtual sense, shoulder to shoulder. I'm with you until this is done. Once again, thank you all. Subscribe, like, leave me a comment. And have a great and blessed day. And may Almighty God bless you and yours, not only this day, but every day of your lives. Amen.